The Redondo Beach Budget and Finance Committee is hereby called to order at 6:35. Jacob, could we get a roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Marin, absent. Commissioner Jesty, absent. Commissioner Allen,
Present.
Commissioner Ramcharan, absent. Commissioner Sherbin,
Here.
Commissioner Turner,
Here.
and Chair Woodham.
Here. If you stand, let's do the salute to the flag. Ready? Go. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I get a motion to approve the order of agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Blue folder items, there are none, or at least none that I've seen.
We have not received any blue folder items.
Okay. Consent calendar. I have one item on the consent calendar, the minutes for April 23rd that I'd like to pull and discuss. Does anyone else have an issue with the, if not, going to get a motion to approve the consent calendar with just F1 on it?
So moved.
Oh,
So,
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes, the question I have on the minutes has to do with, there's a point here where we were discussing CalPERS reserve, and the minutes show that I said, Chair Woodham stated it was the CalPERS payment that really caused the issue, so the city could justify going into the reserves for some amount of money to cover it. That sounds to me like I was giving my approval for that to happen again, and it was not my intent. My intent was to say that it was understandable last year, but not this year. So I'd like to, I can talk with you about how I'd like to rephrase that, but something along the lines of justified for last year, but not for fiscal 27. And that's the only change, so. Does anyone else have a change or an issue with the minutes?
No.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes as we've corrected them?
Motion to approve as amended.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Okay. No excluded consent calendar items. Do we have any public participation on non-agenda items?
Anybody that would like to make any comments, welcome to come up and make your comment.
You want me to walk all the way up?
Yes. Yes, come on up.
Oh, Santa Cruz.
What are the non-agenda items?
Oh.
I was just confused a little on what was going on.
This is for anything that's not specifically on the agenda. If you would like to discuss something that's not part of what's listed on the agenda already.
Oh, I see. I thought this was like talking about
Well,
what you guys were talking about.
the only things that you should, that we're not ready to hear right now would be something that we're planning on talking about. So probably you're going to have a question about something that you're interested in. This would be a good time to ask that question, I think. Is that?
Oh. I see. I wish I would have given it more thought. Okay. I'm very sorry. I will return back.
Well, again, it's any issue that you'd like to bring except those 3 items that are on the agenda.
Right. So this is like me bringing up something of my own concern.
Correct. That's
Okay.
in the purview of the Budget and Finance Commission.
Right. I'm sorry. My question was about what this was about.
Okay.
So thank you.
Okay.
Did we answer it?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Thank you. You'll perhaps have another opportunity as the meeting
There's
goes on.
one, you have to come up to the microphone.
Hello. I just had a question. I'm not sure if it might be related to this, but
Give us your name so that we can,
my name is Keijiro Hattori. I'm a senior at Redondo Union High School. My question is, for the increase in tourism, recently that's been increasing, and in the next, I guess, few years, and also in a few months, the FIFA World Cup will be hosted in the United States, as well as the Olympics in 2028. How around, of course, Redondo Beach in the South Bay area, how would you combat tourism and I guess the increase in, I guess, tourists in the next few years as of just like budgeting with hotels and I guess activities and I guess like new facilities for athletic centers?
thank you.
I think we have a person and present tonight who's well qualified to answer that.
Our city manager's here.
Yeah, so that would be subject to our budget conversation later, which typically for non-agenda items, we don't answer responding questions that are raised. It's a public comment feedback opportunity for the public to the commission itself. Because it's not an agendized item, we can't talk to that. However, we will be answering that question as part of the budget discussion here, which is the next item.
So just hang around for the next 2 or 3 hours and you'll hear some comments on it.
But that will be a big part of the revenue side of it.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
You'll hear a little bit
You'll
about
hear
that
about
in just a few minutes.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks for your question.
Anything online?
No one on Zoom and no e-comments.
Okay, through item H, nothing continued from previous agendas. Move on to item J1. We're fortunate to have Mike Wazinski here with us again to discuss the budget. And this is, he's presented this once to our last meeting and then has made the same comments or similar comments to city council. So let us, we show 3 items here, J1, J2, and J3. For the commission, let's understand that 2 and 3 are less important now, especially with what's going on with the budget. So let's focus on J1. Mike has comments prepared, and then he's prepared to answer questions for as long as we want to ask questions about the budget. So, Mike, turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. And it's, again, my pleasure to be before all of you. As was mentioned, we delivered the proposed budget to the City Council here about a week ago now. We provided a brief receive and file, as we describe it, presentation to the council at last Tuesday's meeting, which will effectively initiate our hearing cycle, which begins with the first Tuesday in June and will hopefully culminate on June 16th with adoption of the budget. I've got Stephanie here with me, of course. We're going to tag team this presentation, but we're going to give you a little bit of an overview on the proposed budget, why we've recommended what we have. And then, as was mentioned, I'm here to answer any questions you might have and walk you through any particular elements of the budget as you see it. General themes here tonight, of course, we'll talk through kind of how we arrived at this. It's very similar to what I described to you all when we were in the input gathering stage. It's a more conservative budget, and you'll see that in the metrics here. We were cautious, and as I had pledged to this group in particular, we were determined not to use reserve funds to balance this year's budget, irrespective of the gap that was presented to us. So you'll see that we have accomplished balancing the budget through a different means this year, more of a cost control mechanism, and we'll talk a little bit about that. There are some summaries of both our general revenues and expenditures. Stephanie will walk you through those. There's a little bit of an overview on our capital budget as proposed at a very high level basis. And then we describe the specific calendar activities that I just mentioned for the council's public hearings.
Mike, is it okay if we ask questions as you go?
Of course, always, absolutely. Okay. Interrupt at any time. So as I mentioned, we focused immediately on finding ways to increase revenue. As there was a question about transient occupancy tax, the impact of tourism, you'll see that that's a bit of a theme in our budget. It's a bit strained still, unfortunately, for reasons that this commission is aware of with our Marine Avenue Hotel properties, as well as a little bit of delay in the arrival of the Eddy Hotel, which is under construction in South Redondo, but not yet open. We anticipate that being open at about the mid-year point. So we only have 6 months of projected revenues for that property. But that, coupled with what has been a very chilled overall market, is one of the themes in this year's budget. We're constrained on the TOT side, and we're doing everything we can to try to make up for it with other fee updates, whether it be user fees. We've got new creative facility fees, street closure fees, et cetera. So you'll see that in the budget. As I mentioned, near-term cost management is a big focus. We are balancing this budget with what we're calling a flexible hiring freeze, effectively a 5%, a little under 5% vacancy factor, which in effect means I will be very judicious about the positions that I allow staff to recruit for and fill over the course of the fiscal year. Stephanie and I will monitor on a monthly basis where we're at with that projected savings and ensure that our staffing levels will achieve what is about $2.9 million in annual savings by the end of the year. That isn't that atypical for us. At any given time, we might have between 5 and 12% of our positions vacant for any number of reasons, retirements, long-term disability leave, et cetera. So to achieve a 5% hard savings, we think is manageable, but what it will do is rather than just allow the natural attrition to occur, it will force me to hold positions for a period of time until we're certain that we're going to meet that $2.9 million savings. Yes, sir.
As the year goes on, with the hiring freeze, then your percentage of vacancies will increase as the year goes on? Is that how that's
correct?
Going to be managed?
It can tend to compound. So I may relieve some of that pressure depending on which department's affected. Some positions, particularly our public safety positions, have a natural sort of prime the pump cycle where we can authorize the recruitment, but it may be 10 to 12 months before they're actually in the building after they go through a very rigorous hiring and backgrounding effort. So we can start processes knowing that at the tail end of that, it may still create 6, 8, 9 months of savings from that particular position. So we'll think about that. We'll manage that calendar and cycle, but the goal will be basically to ensure that $2.9 million of salary savings are achieved by the end of the fiscal year. That's really the focal near-term cost management theme in this budget this year. And then we've got limited, what I would call service and program changes. The decision packages you'll see are very few and far between this year. I think 31 is the number. It's our fewest in many, many budgets. I mean, this commission's seen numbers as high as 78, 82 in prior years. So 31 decision packages means we only let through the most critical requests. And that was really to fund what I would call core service needs. And you'll see that in the document as you go through it.
A question on that hiring freeze. The budget, the preliminary budget that we've seen, does that assume 100% fill on positions, or does that assume?
Yeah, our core expenditures have all positions budgeted at a full annualized salary. That's where we begin. And that's oftentimes where our conservatism comes to play and helps us. That's why we typically have savings at year end, because it's really impossible to be 100% filled at any given time with an organization as dynamic as ours, with as much maturation as it has. So it's typical to have salary savings, but we conservatively budget as if everybody's here because we don't want to hold anybody back through that recruitment cycle. And we don't want to assume that they're vacant. But this is one of those years where it's going to be important that we account for that, and we're using that to balance.
So your task, the task will be to keep that. If we assume there's a 5% slippage now, the task is just to keep that in place and not let it get fuller than that.
Yeah, exactly.
And in that equation, are there departments that are important enough that they won't be cut back 5%, but others will be cut back more, or is it just across the board 5%?
You know, it'll be generally case by case, but what I'll be looking for is, does that department already have a critical dearth of employees? You know, are they already, do they already have a number of vacancies? Is that number of vacancies going to affect their ability to deliver service, whether it's an internal service function or an external service function? The police department, fire department, they can float vacancies longer than most departments because they're structured to do that. It's rare that of our 99 sworn personnel, we are filled with 99 sworn personnel. So there's typically float in there, and we're able to staff our critical positions without being at 99. So a department like that has some floating capacity. However, when it starts to hit 89, 90, 91 filled positions, that can start to affect and wear on our employees because they might have mandatory overtime, they might have some other impacts. So we have to be careful. Every department's a little bit different. Fire can float to some degree because of overtime deployment, but that can create burnout and wear and tear. So I have to, kind of manage that based on each of the service needs. Different functions, just don't occur without a staff member. If our recreation department is missing somebody, that program may not be something we can deploy. So we have to be careful. Public Works, same thing. If our groundskeepers and our Park Services division can absorb some vacancy, but there becomes a point where now we're going to see a noticeable change in our maintenance standard in the community. So each is its own analysis, but I feel okay with that 5% target. It's one that we can achieve, I think, without a lot of pain, not one we would want to sustain, of course, over multiple years, but one we can absorb next fiscal year, I believe.
Okay.
And then you'll see us as we look forward why we're using that strategy, because we still remain hopeful in 27, 28 that we're going to return to structural balance. And there are a few positive things that are on the horizon, and we'll talk a little bit about them. In fact, getting right to it, revenue modernization, strange word. We have two initiatives that are going to be presented and put on the ballot next spring, next March, based on council direction. One is an increase to our transient occupancy tax rate. Right now it's at 12%. They've directed us to create a ballot measure to take that up to as much as 15%. That'll be on the March ballot next year. It doesn't mean it will go to 15. What we intend to do is give ourselves that cap, that capacity, and then administrative action from the council would be necessary to actually exact that change and implement that change. And as this body knows, each percent is at current levels about $750,000 of net increment for us on the revenue side. That number could be even closer to $1 million when we're humming and we've got full participation of all hotels. So $750,000 to $1 million per percent of increase. So that's real money to us. When you think about the $2.9 million deficit this year, if we had $3 more million of TOT, we'd be okay. We'd be balanced, right? Without really needing to do anything draconian. So we like that. We're hopeful that that'll help structurally stabilize us going forward. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question too, then, with the economy being what it is and we haven't seen it yet, but I'm guessing that our TOT is going to be lower than perhaps what we had budgeted. With the combination of the economy plus an increase in the TOT, are we concerned that people are going to be going other places than Redondo Beach for their vacations?
Great question. The elasticity question's a real one. We've talked about it with some of our hotel partners. What we've heard and discovered is that there isn't much in rate setting that's affected by a 12 or 15% TOT. What they say is as long as you're not an anomaly in the region, and we're certainly not, we're on the, I would call it mid-size right now, as long as you don't stick out, you're probably not going to see an impact. Most people, when they're shopping, aren't looking at that bottom line tax basis. If we were a unique city with, say, 21% all-in TOT and certain excise fees, whatever it might be, then maybe there's an impact, but not going to 14 or 15% is what we're hearing. That's a good thought. The other reality is our TOT revenues are very conservatively projected this year. You'll hear from Stephanie about that in a little bit. Somewhere between $2.5 and $3 million off what they could be if our occupancy rate was closer to 85, 90% like it's been in the past. Right now we're hovering in the mid 60s. That's pretty low for us historically. So the market is soft. I don't know if you've read anything. The Times had an article here recently. The region in general is down 30%. Now we're hopeful that the World Cup and some of these big events will help pick things up, but international travel is down massively, not just in our region, but throughout the state and the country. So we'll see. We were hopeful that the World Cup would make a difference for us. We're not expecting that now. We're a little cautious on that. And then the other half of that revenue modernization is an opportunity for us to review our utility user tax ordinance. There was a case out of Santa Barbara where streaming services now were determined to be eligible under basic utility user tax. There was a kind of a longstanding assumption that streaming would be subject to the no internet tax type federal standard under the old Al Gore initiative there many years ago. It has been determined that it's really, if the ordinance is written correctly, it's no different than cable service because of kind of the nature of that business now. So that Santa Barbara case gives us and other cities an opportunity to revisit our ordinance, modernize it, and then take that out to the voters as a ballot measure. And if the voters concur, it gives us a chance to perhaps collect utility user tax on streaming services. Because as you know, most folks are transitioning away from cable, traditional cable, to now video streaming. We've lost a lot of revenue through that transition. This would give us a chance to recapture that money. So that's something we're looking forward to as well. But it will require a ballot measure and a vote of the voters and their approval to ultimately implement that change. And then some of the other longer-term cost management strategies that we've deployed, this commission might be aware that we had a pretty robust discussion with council about perhaps adjusting our property insurance coverages. We were one of the few communities that was still insuring 100% of our buildings for earthquake coverage. One of the rare to do that, yet we were subject to a risk pool that would have limited our coverage and refund at $100 million. Meanwhile, we had roughly $270 million of assets that we were paying on. Made no fiscal sense for us. So we contemplated either reducing the portfolio that was eligible for earthquake coverage or eliminating it altogether. By eliminating it altogether, we're going to save ourselves $1 million a year in premium costs. And when we ran that math, it just made sense to do that. Most agencies of our nature do not have earthquake coverage. So big savings there. And then we've made some adjustments also to our self-insured retention amount. Historically, we've been at $500,000 of an SIR. We are at the very low end. In fact, that $500,000 was established more than 2 decades ago, so it hasn't even been adjusted for inflation. We pay a very high premium cost to our risk pool to provide that veil SIR at $500,000. So we increased that number to $1 million this year. That is anticipated to save us somewhere between $700,000 and $1 million into the future on premium costs. So we made those changes we won't experience that in the budget this year because of our internal service fund model. That's a retrospective model, but we will see that savings in hard cash outflow in our self-insurance fund and then indirectly through the departments that contribute to that, which are mostly general funded. So major changes there, just trying to control costs, benchmark ourselves to other agencies which either didn't have earthquake insurance coverage or had a much higher SIR. Most compatriots have an SIR of somewhere between $1.5 million or $3 million, and then they get into their excess coverages. So we were a rarity to be at $500,000 for SIR, but we were paying for that in premium. Okay, what else here? This is kind of the basic math for how we are balanced. We begin with about a $1.4 million estimated fund balance, which is effectively our year-end savings from 25-26, our current fiscal year. We've got our general proposed revenues and transfers in pre-decision packages at about $125 million. We've got our proposed expenditures and transfers out at about $128 million. We then have our recommended decision packages, which create net ongoing value to us of about $2.1 million, offset in part next fiscal year by $420,000 of one-time costs. So then we have our net positive effect there of about 1.7 for next fiscal year. And then down below, you see the savings created by the vacancy factor, the flexible hiring freeze, and then offset negatively by our upcoming 26-27 unfunded accrued liability payment, which is about $3.5 million. So when you add all those different columns together, the 1.3 positive, the 2.5 negative, the 830 negative, and then the 554 negative, you get to balance, and that's where we sit. So,
I have a few questions on this before you move on to the next slide.
Sure.
So the 2.162 decision package budget change, is that how much we're not going to be using, so is that savings?
That's net, that's revenue in excess of cost. So there's a lot of revenues in our decision packages this year. And then those are netted against ongoing expenditure.
So,
And then that's
okay,
that's the
so
positive impact.
I'm not talking about the 2.571.
The
So the recommended
2162,
decision package ongoing, 2.162. Is
That's
that savings?
positive.
It's a
Not,
positive.
it's not necessarily savings. It's revenue in excess of cost. So it's new revenues, it's savings offset against cost.
I don't understand it, so I'm going to ask again.
So that's the
Net new
net
revenues.
impact. So that's a positive net impact.
So
So,
what made that number? What were you adding to
so
get
if you
to that
look at the
number?
31 decision packages, and there's a breakdown in the message
Okay.
to go through them, most of them are generating new revenues.
Uh-huh.
Some of them are actually reducing costs, so creating savings. And then there are some that are costing us money. But the net impact is $2.1 million to the positive.
Okay, so it
for our
would
budget.
be helpful if there was a slide like summarizing that, because that's what I wanted to know. I wanted to see.
It's in the decision. If you look at the
I know,
city,
it's 300, I have.
yeah, if you look at
I
the
have.
city
If you
manager's
want to
message.
open it, will
there-
you open
yeah,
it
yeah.
and show it to me?
Yeah.
Because I've looked at it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know the link is there, thank you, I've looked at it. So,
Oh, there's a whole
like, what
column,
is-
there's a whole spreadsheet that shows how the decision packages accrue to the budget on a bottom line
so
basis.
I did not see how the 2.162 was calculated. That's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah, so so it's broken down in two ways. That's the ongoing, so decision packages that have an ongoing revenue or savings or expenditure are put into one category. That's what creates the 2.1. And then we have our one-time activities, whatever they might be. Most one-time are costs. So that's a negative $400,000. So you'll see it in the column in the city manager's message. There's a column that shows ongoing revenue, ongoing expense, one-time expense, and then that's bottomed out at the bottom of that table.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand in a big picture is what services are we not going to provide that makes that $2 million? Right?
Yeah, there are a few service reductions in there, not a ton. Most of them, and those are in the specific decision packages. And if you've got questions about the decision packages, we can talk about them.
I just want to know the big items that make this 2.1.
The biggest item would be the new revenues in our community development department.
Okay.
And as a result of just extra building right now in our
Yes,
contract
and that
model.
was not in a proposed revenue and transfers in?
No, that's different. So,
Okay.
and Stephanie will go into that more notably. So these are things that we're proposing as changes to our structure this year. So new fees, new revenues,
Okay,
new anticipated changes to structure, et cetera,
okay,
from core, which is our kind of our previous
got it. Okay.
approach. Yeah. And it's in really the easiest way to see all that is through that table. It kind of shows each of them and it summarizes them in that area. But yeah, it's all of these different categories that gets us basically to balance. That's the budget in a high level, very summarized format. I think the next slide Stephanie's going to cover, she's going to go through our revenues, structural revenues and structural expenditures.
Yep, so this is our general fund revenues. I will say these do actually include the proposed numbers. This is the way that we showed it this year. So this number does include the base plus the decision packages. So I think Mike covered a lot of this already, but you'll just notice our total tax revenue, our major category, is up about 2% over the revised mid-year number. The kind of items that are doing well versus not well should be pretty familiar to this group. We continue to have fairly strong property tax in lieu of VLF, which is related to property tax values. We have a small bump in our utility users tax. This doesn't reflect any strong change. This is our consultant projection and is kind of catching up after several years of flat budgeting. So we have a couple increases. We have a very small increase, about 2% to our sales and use tax. If the commission will recall, we actually reduced our sales tax budget projection at mid-year this year. So if you kind of consider that, it's even more flat than the 2%. Again, this reflects our, best projection based on our consultant advice and kind of the general sales tax environment for the state and our region. The biggest number to really look at here, city manager already touched on, which is our transient occupancy tax. You can see our projection here is down about 4% from our revised mid-year number. This largely reflects, again, as we've discussed, kind of challenging tourism environment and that effect on our 3 hotels that we share the site-specific tax agreement with. Yes.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
If you were to look at the reduction there, the 4%, and say what part of that was due to hotels not coming online versus just a reduction in the overall volume of existing rooms?
Maybe I'll take a stab at that. I'd say it's,
I'm just
no, on a high level basis, it's really a function of our hopefulness last year that the Marine Avenue hotel sites would have replenished the authority-funded reserve and then would have begun to accrue to our TOT bottom line. That didn't occur this year as we had hoped, though we had adopted a budget that expected it to for at least a few months. We're being more cautious next year. We do expect them to accrue positively for some period of time, but not for the entire calendar year. And that's the delta. So we were more optimistic last year that they were going to come online, but they didn't come online as we had hoped.
Okay, when you say come online now, is it rooms from last year and rooms this year being rooms on rooms?
It's not new construction.
No, that was my,
Yeah,
I
it's
guess
not
that's
new.
what I was trying to read into.
Not new construction related, but rooms were going through refurbishment in those properties, and when they go through refurbishment and their revenues decline,
Oh, I've got you.
then they get below a threshold that accrues net TOT to our bottom line. So we were hopeful that refresh was going to be completed. They would start operating at a higher level. They would replenish the fund, and we would start to see TOT. That was delayed another significant number of months.
So there's a number of reasons besides a lack of tourists coming in.
It's both.
That would impact us.
Yeah, it was
because if they
soft.
decide to go through a maintenance cycle.
They did. It was a soft market coupled with sort of bad refurbishment timing. And that continues to occur even next fiscal year for us.
Curious, quick question. The hotel that's a part of the apartment complex at PCH and Palos Verdes Drive, that has been under construction for 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
What's the status of that? Are they?
That's the Eddy. That's the one we're hopeful will be open mid-year. They're closer than they're closer. They're not quite there yet. But they're getting there.
So mid-year.
That's our estimate here. This is assuming 6 months of revenues from that property.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered the TOT. Again, as with last year, we'll continue to monitor this very closely, and we'll have another look at it at mid-year, 6 months from now.
And the
Sure.
delta from what that used to be, I think you all mentioned this at the last meeting, that was at 10 million or so per year before COVID, right?
Yeah, a little bit under 10. Yeah, but about that.
So we're $1.8 million to 2 million under where we were
Pre-COVID.
4 years ago.
And then with inflation, we should probably be closer to 11.
Yeah.
So we look at that as we've got about $2.5 to $3 million of upside that we're not able to confidently project right now, which is really unfortunate. That's the difference with us being structurally balanced right now.
You're right.
The other item that I'll note on this page is the difference in our transfers in item. There are 2 primary things behind this reduction. One is that our mid-year number included $3.5 million to note our transfer in from the CalPERS Reserve Fund. As city managers mentioned already, we are not employing reserve funds this year, so that $3.5 million no longer shows up in the transfers in amount. Also, just to kind of clarify our budgeting, we removed a number of items that just pass in and out of the general fund. They offset. We looked at it. There's no reason to continue doing that. So this reflects only actual transfers in. So
Just
sure.
to clarify, so the 3.5 million that was borrowed from the reserve, is that in a budget to replace those funds?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
So including everything, we're at about 129.6 million on our revenue side. Moving on to expenditures, you can see before our transfers out, we're at about a 2% decrease from our mid-year number. The important thing to remember here, and you can see this as you look at our maintenance operations and capital outlay differences, is that mid-year will include our one-time carryover items. These are not included in the base budget, and that's why you'll see those totals significantly lower in our proposed 26-27 budget. Our personnel, and again, this is total full personnel, not including any reductions for vacancies, shows about a 2% increase over our prior year. This includes kind of just regular annual increases. And we do have one MOU scheduled increase for 26-27, which is our Police Officers Association.
It's our fire association.
Oh, fire, I'm so sorry. Our transfers out number, you'll see a similar decrease to the one I just discussed in the revenues. Again, we're cleaning out items that we do not need to transfer in and transfer out. The remaining items here are the general fund portion of our 2021 lease revenue bond for pension refinancing and a little over $1 million for to subsidize our street landscaping and lighting fund. Below the line, you can see our adjusting items. We have our unfunded accrued liability, general fund portion of our total payment, offset by our proposed vacancies, getting us to about 131 million.
Question on the transfers out.
Sure.
Stephanie, you and I have talked about this. That includes the 11 million or so of debt service. Is there a way to, and I know, I think you explained to me that you transfer that out of the general fund and then pay it out of what you transferred out to.
Yep.
Is there a way to without disrupting much, to show debt service in slides like this with an $11 million payment? That's fairly important to see.
We can definitely do that. I can just break it out to show that more clearly.
It's not all that different than what we're doing with UAL. We're breaking out UAL as a standalone one-time payment. The 11 million you're referring to is our debt service on our pension obligation bonds.
Yeah.
That's effectively what that is. So between the two, you're dealing with 14.5 of pension obligation.
Yeah.
The good news is the UAL, as you know, the POB debt service is fixed for another 18 to 20 years, whatever it's going to be. That UAL is more cyclical and unknown, and right now is actually trending down, as I think we've discussed a little bit here.
I'll turn it back to the city manager to overview of our decision packages.
Yeah, thanks. And the reminder here, it's actually 32 decision packages, not 31, 21 of which are affecting the general fund directly. As I said, many of the decision packages touch on fee updates. We've got changes to the Community Development Department fee structure based on a fee study that we did here a couple of months ago. That's the largest item that's generating about 1.1 million of new ongoing general fund revenue. We've got a couple of other fee structures in there as well. A continued increase to our parking meter rates. As you might remember, the council, as part of the budget motion last year, directed a 25 cent per hour increase this fiscal year and asked that we present another 25 cents the next fiscal year. We've done that. We are recommending that. That's actually still below at least the beach cities number that Manhattan and Hermosa are experiencing. So with this increase, we'll be up another quarter. That generates almost $350,000 of new revenue to the city. Yes, sir.
Is that a flexible rate based on the location of the meters, or is it the standard rate for the entire
We're now
city?
consistent across the board. We're recommending the same change down at the pier structures and our pay station rates down there. So everything will be uniform at the same rate as proposed.
Does that, as proposed? Well, my question is, if I park at the beach, is it going to cost me more than if I park 2 miles away from the?
If it has a meter, it's going to cost you the same.
I would suggest that maybe you look at more of a flexible and even a time-based rating.
Yeah, it's not a bad thought. Most of our meters are in the coastal zone, as you know. They're in highly desired areas for parking. So what we have found is if we, in a great example is Redondo Street, you might have noticed we've installed
That's exactly
the balance of the meters. Well, you might remember when we didn't have meters at those spaces, all of those spaces were full. Now that we have the meters, guess where all those people are parking?
In front of people's houses.
Well, no, they're actually one block west, closer to lot 13. So they were walking the extra block to avoid the price and the charge. Now they're just parking closer.
That's a phenomena. Huntington Beach, where I lived, they had meters on Pacific Coast Highway, and the people in the first houses were complaining because the surfers were all over their property. They put meters in the first block, then the people in the second block were complaining because everybody was parking up there. And they continue to push that up.
That's right.
And it's a phenomena that's generally.
Avoid the price, right? Yeah, no, exactly. So.
Can I interject too, please? So I'm looking at the chart since we're exactly on that. I'm looking at the chart that you referenced, PC. So a good chunk of this extra revenues coming from fees, looks like. So parking meters, hourly increase, another one, 223. Yes, and then community development, I guess we increased a lot of the fees. That's over $1 million. And then this is the one I wanted to ask about. The crossing guard services, did we?
That's an increased cost, yeah.
So, okay, I don't know why I thought they were going to decrease the.
We're decreasing, so you're correct. We are decreasing the number of crossing guards in the proposed budget, but it's still an increase to our core expenditure line. We've been funding crossing guards with one-time funds to the tune of about $550,000 a year the last few years to support 27 locations. We're only recommending sustaining 18 locations, so we don't have to spend as much additional money, but it's still more expensive than what's in the core budget right now.
Okay, so majority of this is coming from the fees.
The revenues, revenue generated by new fees, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. There's a few, that's what I meant, there's a few savings in some of the reorganizations down below, but it's mostly revenue.
May I ask a question just about the crossing guards, because that actually has an effect on kind of right where I live. I'm curious to know kind of the analysis that was taken on the savings by reducing the number of crossing guards versus the general safety of the kids that are walking to school. What kind of considerations were taken into place?
Yeah, there's a pretty robust analysis. So each of the locations, so we had 27 locations identified. There were another, I think 3, if memory serves, that we'd had requests for historically. So call it roughly 30 spots were studied. And what we did is we have a subcommittee of the mayor and council. We have our traffic engineer. We have one of our police captains who supervises the program. We have a member of my staff, one of our assistants to the city managers who is spearheading the review. And they were looking, and we did point-in-time counts at each of the locations. How many pedestrians are coming through, how many bicyclists are coming through, how many vehicles are coming through. And then our traffic engineer synthesized that data with how many intersections are in play, how many street crossings exist, what are the sight lines, are there any other peculiarities to the intersection, is it generally, what are the speeds, are they high speed, lower speed, kind of broke it out through a matrix and sort of cross-reference that data to come up with is an objective and analysis as to each location's value as we could identify, right? Obviously, the greater the number of the pedestrians, bicyclists, and vehicles combined with more challenging intersections, right, that's creating the highest need for a crossing guard. Whereas some spots may be lightly crossed, lightly trafficked, slow rates of speeds, et cetera, maybe not as critical. So that's the data we use to reduce it from 27 to 18. The key though to 18 isn't just a function of cost. So a lot of folks say, hey, it's the city's trying to save money. No question, we will save money by reducing it to 18. But what we have found through years of doing this is that's the number that we can sustain from a staffing standpoint. When we have 27 locations, it's oftentimes the case where we have a vacancy created by a part-time crossing guard that we have to fill with a full-time police officer, MSO, or somebody from our from our code enforcement team. We assign personnel, full-time personnel, to fill those voids, because one thing that we hold dear is once we commit to a location, we want to commit to it being staffed morning and afternoon. Where we feel, and this is why we're doing so much outreach and communication and notification, we want to make very clear that going into next year, which locations will be guarded and which ones will not. So everybody can base their walking past, their morning commutes, whatever they might be, on that knowledge. And that if we staff a location, we staff it for the year. I do believe want to do some analysis going forward. Are these the right 18? Have the traffic patterns changed? So I think we're going to commit to continuing to review the locations that were vacated going forward, to maybe make changes in the future. If maybe a location was of pretty high need this next year, but it's determined patterns have changed and maybe it's not as critical, so we can shift resource. But we feel very strongly that 18 is the number that's sustainable for us. And what I mean by that is we can bring on a pool of maybe 20 to 22 part-time crossing guards. So we have a bench that we can draw on when we have somebody call in sick or go on vacation or what have you. We can fill that spot without affecting our traffic unit, our MSOs, parking enforcement, et cetera. So 18 helps us budgetarily, but more importantly, it's the number we think we can staff consistently and sustainably without impacting other policing.
As far as the traffic patterns and the number of pedestrians and things, is there a minimum criteria that we have that would require a crossing guard, or is it just?
There's no requirement. I mean,
So-
yeah, there's no requirement for a crossing guard anywhere under any general law. It's a very nice thing to have. And we're fortunate to be a community that can afford to provide as many crossing guards as we do. We are, even at 18, we outpace most of our neighbors in terms of what we're supporting and providing to the district. So,
So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when I'm thinking about some of our neighbors, doesn't Redondo Beach also have more elementary schools and just schools in general than most of our neighbors?
We did kind of a per school analysis. And, right now we've got 27 guards for, 8 elementaries and 2 middle schools. We have almost a 3-to-1 ratio, a little under that. Most of our neighbors have something closer to 1-to-1 per schools.
Okay. Appreciate you
Torrance,
taking some.
it's 1 crossing guard per campus, if that, depending on the circumstance. So, so there isn't, but there is a national kind of standard. There's a volunteer safety program, the AAA crossing guard program that was created nationally, and they created some metrics to determine what would be a location to be eligible for, like a student crossing guard versus an adult volunteer, et cetera. So some of that criterion was looked at to determine, hey, would it make sense for us? Does that location fit a student need or an adult need? Because if it can be staffed by a student under a volunteer program, you would naturally think it's probably less intense perhaps than other sites. So we did some of that reverse engineering. The committee has worked really hard to try to identify the 18 most critical spots. It's not been easy. I mean, I think we'd all love to be able to say, hey, we've got endless resources and we could staff, infinite number of guards. In decades of doing this, it's just been clear to us, any more than 18, and it isn't going to just be crossing guards out there. It's going to be police officers, MSOs, parking enforcement, et cetera. And that starts to really affect operations when we have to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. So I live basically across the street from Jefferson.
Oh, yeah.
And that was one of the, that street right there is heavily trafficked. And
Which street are you on, if you don't mind sharing?
it's Harkness and I forget what the cross street is, but it literally runs right into the.
Right, you're on the west side campus there.
Yeah. And Miss Jean, our crossing guard there, she was pretty vocal about she might not be there any longer and was causing quite a bit of concern amongst all of the parents. Fortunately, and perhaps unfortunately, Councilmember Obaji's child goes there as well.
Yeah.
And so I've seen him be engaged in some rather active conversations about this. So,
yeah.
And I understand that a lot of times it's more so the negative information that gets passed along with more enthusiasm than actually understanding the facts. So I just thought this was a great opportunity for me to better understand both sides of the picture. So
Yeah,
I
no,
you
appreciate the
asking
question. Yeah, no, and thanks for the question. And it will be challenging, particularly for the folks at Jefferson. I mean, there have been 4 there historically, at least in the last few years. That's very unique. Jefferson's the only one that has 4. That's probably worth noting. And we did the relocation this year, as you know. That was part of the conversation a couple of months ago. But we're going to continue to evaluate and make sure that we're deploying the resources as best we can, right? That has the greatest impact. And hopefully folks will be able to make an adjustment without too much,
Is
much
there
consternation.
somewhere that parents might be able to access and have, or the ability to read kind of the ideas and thoughts behind the decisions that were made? Because I think, again, it's just kind of a lack of proper communication and understanding the facts of it.
There was
I can vocalize
sure.
that to try and help.
Good question. There is a kind of an FAQ, if you will. There have been some staff reports that touch on it. There was actually a meeting at Jefferson Elementary School last week. Yeah. The subcommittee came down and our team to kind of talk it through a little bit. But yeah, there is material, and we actually plan to have a very robust outreach program after the decisions are finalized here this summer, so parents are well notified going into the next school year.
Yeah.
That's really important to us, making sure there's no surprises. And that the team is working on that outreach strategy. In fact, I think they're meeting again tomorrow on it. So I do believe there'll be quite a bit of communication, both directly from us and in partnership with the school district.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. All right, well, I guess we were still on budget decision packages. Yeah, so here are the services. You saw the breakdown there in the net. We can probably move on to the next item. Capital projects. So big jump this year, and it's a good thing. It's because this is the first year we anticipate spending our Measure FP bond proceeds. We do plan to issue bonds this fall to build our new fire and police stations. So you're seeing a big jump in the total CIP budget from prior years because of that. We expect a lot of that construction to occur, or at least the spending on that construction to begin next fiscal year. The overall CIP, including that Measure FP resource, is just under $200 million with 89 projects. We've been working hard to reduce the total number of projects to just those that are of most critical need. You might remember last year's CIP and the prior CIP, the numbers were 134, 120 projects. So we've been working hard to clear those decks, complete those projects, and then make sure what we put back is really essential. Our general estimate on current fiscal year spending is going to be about $16.5 million, with 28 projects completed and another 25 designed or awarded from a procurement standpoint. So you can see the breakdown on the chart there. Most of our projects fall under the public facility or street category, with a handful of park and then general improvements, et cetera. So that's the CIP in summary. We're excited about it. Hopefully you all had a chance to look at that document. And there's a lot of exciting work. Most of our new resources outside of the FP conversation are going towards Seaside Lagoon. We anticipate beginning construction for the new Seaside Lagoon facility next fiscal year. Hope to start in early 2027 with that project. That's got about $3 million of Quimby funds that we're recommending to add to the state grant that we received, the $10 million state grant that we received to close that project out. So pretty exciting there. I'm trying to think of other highlights. We've got money in the CIP for pickleball courts up at Aviation Park. That's been a big one from a community request standpoint for a while. And of course, we continue to do very well when it comes to acquiring regional grants for our street improvements. Most of the funding in this CIP outside of the Measure FP proceeds comes from grants, regional competitive, Measure M, Measure R grants. So we're pleased to have that.
Question on the FP projects.
Yeah.
I know we're early in execution of those, but can you give us any idea of where you think we would stand as far as beginning construction, completing construction? What's the life of that likely to be?
Next step, we've done thorough invitations, interviews, vetting of the prospective design build firms. We've got a great response from that contracting community, and we're about ready to make recommendations for the design build firm, progressive design build firm for both the fire stations and police stations. That item will be before council probably in early July. Once they come online, they are our partner, right? They're our designer and contractor, and they'll begin in earnest with the construction drawings, progressive design. We'll have check-ins on price, and then as we finalize that contract number for final price for each site, they'll begin the construction effort. There's very real chance that we'll see some level of construction inside of the next 18 months. We're planning for projects to be complete here. I don't have the schedule in front of me, Luke, and the team would know better than me, but I suspect that we'll have the new facilities built here in the next 2 to 4 years, depending on the site. So we are on schedule and currently on budget based on our, at least the preliminary information we've received from our prospective firms. So that's very, very positive.
You say on budget, but what are we spending money for? Just the design,
Yeah, just based on estimates. So as we've continued to refine estimates at every stage of this process, the estimates continue to show reasonable hope that we will be able to build within resource. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and this is the budget calendar. As I mentioned, we had the receive and file presentation at council last week, the same presentation I'm giving you all tonight. And then we will have 3 consecutive budget hearings. One will be focused on the operating budget. That'll be June 2nd. On June 9th, the council will be focused on the capital improvement program. And then on the 16th, it'll be budget adoption night. That's where they'll make motions and they'll determine what's included in the final documents. And we have tonight's Budget and Finance Commission meeting, of course, and then you all are, I believe, meeting again on June 11th to finalize your recommendations to council as it pertains to the budget. And really, our action tonight is receive and file the documents as you already have, and any questions, I'm available to answer them, and
yes.
happy to provide any more conversation.
Is there a slide that shows what the revenues for 26, 27 are versus 25, 26?
Yeah.
It was in that original, the package that we got at the last meeting. It was in that.
So here's just the variances. So just, this is the chart. This is as compared to the mid-year number. Now, these aren't actuals, right? We don't have 25, 26 closeout yet, so we don't have actual spending for 25, 26. This is best estimates based on the revised budget at mid-year. So this is the comparison.
Okay, the reason I ask is because, so the revenues we're receiving versus expenses we have, we're spending more than the revenues that are coming in, because we had extra 1.4 million from last year.
Yes, that is correct.
And then we have 2.2 million from fees and, well, mostly in fees, so that's $3.6 million. So it looks like we were short either in revenue or we're spending more 3.6, because that really, the way I think we as a commission, the way we were discussing is that all that extra money that's out there, we should pay it back to the reserves that were borrowed and then add some more funds for the reserves. So to me, when I'm looking at this, we're actually spending $3.6 million more than the revenue that we're receiving.
Well, we're balanced using, to your point, $1.4 million of beginning fund balance. So we are using that 1.4. So in terms of
So what I'm saying is that 1.4 should have been used to pay down the reserves and not.
You mean to replenish the reserve? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
And put in, I think before this commission has also suggested that we should try to have 20%,
Increase
over
reserves.
20%
Yeah.
reserves.
It'd be nice. And just to be clear, we still maintain the 8.33% economic contingency amount. That's up to what, 9.6 million. So that reserve's actually growing this year. And then the CalPERS reserve of 4.5 is untouched. So we do have in total just under $15 million of reserve funds, which is up from where we were last year, if it makes you feel any better. We have grown the economic contingency reserve by several $100,000 in this proposed budget.
Okay. So my thoughts would be, because this is something that I remember Council Member Castle asked, because we were discussing something and we did not communicate out loud, that we still want the reserves to get close to 20% plus. So when I'm looking at these numbers, my comments would be not just to accept and file, but also to add that we still are proposing that we replenish the reserves and add more to the reserves.
And just to be clear, tonight's not the night where you're making your recommendations to council. You get to do that on the 11th. So that would be the night. When you craft your recommendations to council, if you want to make that recommendation, that would be the night to do it.
Okay, but I want to make sure that the council doesn't think that we are not proposing to replenish or add funds to the reserve. Because that's, I think, we didn't mention that before, and one of the council members thought that we don't care to increase our reserves anymore.
I mean, of course, we'd all love to have more. I mean, the challenge, of course, is to do that in this fiscal year's budget, we'd have to cut service or identify new revenue.
Yes, and that's why I was asking, what are the expenses and revenues? They're not balancing, really. We're using funds that were saved from last year, and then we're using the fees that were added this year. So that's...
Question along those lines. In looking at the budget and anticipating whether we're going to be over on revenue or under on revenue, if for instance, the economy goes from sort of punk to really punk, and revenue is down, how do you analyze our options at that point? We're not taking much out of the general fund budget for capital expenditures, so most of the revenue, most of the expenditures are for people and just maintaining what we have, right?
Correct.
So if revenue drops, is our only step to increase that reduction in force from 5% to a higher number? Or do you have other steps that you could take?
Yeah, that's one option. We did leave, there are a couple of discretionary project accounts in the CIP that have general fund revenue attached to them that we didn't allocate or propose for allocation. So while not calling it a reserve, there is a little under $1 million of what I would call discretionary CIP funds that we could draw on as a bit of a rainy day account in that scenario. Of course, that is why we continue to have that. The CalPERS Reserve Fund is to be fungible for us if we have needs beyond resource. That would be another option. We would be reticent to do that unless we felt that revenue bump really was temporary in nature and something we would see recover later. We remain optimistic in 27-28 with the transient occupancy tax number still being artificially low. We remain optimistic about the eventual impacts of the savings associated with our insurance premium costs. We should eventually realize that savings in the general fund. We also remain hopeful that the measure, the utility user tax and TOT measures will create new net increment for us. And there is still hope, as you know better than anybody, if the market holds this fiscal year, and CalPERS sees a third consecutive year of positive returns, we will have extinguished the miscellaneous employee UAL. So we will see about $1 million drop in our UAL payment for 27, 28. So there are some positive signs on the horizon that I feel get us to structural balance pretty comfortably. But to your point, that's not assuming a catastrophic national recession or some other major act.
Well, looking a little further down the road, longer term on revenue, we've talked a lot about North Redondo and ways to increase revenue from new businesses, tax revenue, sales tax revenue from that. What do you see on the horizon for that effort?
Yeah, we have been working so hard on Artesia in particular. We're hoping it'll bear fruit. It's bearing some small fruit right now in a few different investments there. We'd like to see more. The Galleria still the biggest site with upside for us. It really is. That mall, as I've shared with this commission before, is performing at about 20% of its historic capacity on a revenue basis. I mean, that could be a massive economic engine for us if it's revitalized in any format, really, candidly.
To that point, pardon me for interrupting, what was the sales tax revenue? What was our take on the sales tax revenue from that shopping center at its peak?
Now this would have been different dollars, as you know, but at its peak, it was about 60% of our general fund total. Today, it's about 15%. So, if I put it into just basic numbers, the upside today, if the mall was operating like today, like it used to, we would probably, our sales and use tax figure would be in the $17 to $18 million range, as opposed to 11. So, I mean, that would be nice.
Ever since Nordstrom's relocated to the Lama Mall,
that was the beginning of the end.
Rapidly declined.
Yep, exactly. So if that could recover even to 50% of its historic norm, that we're structurally balanced. That has a lot of upside for us if we can ever get there. They've put it out to market. They pulled it off the market. I know they had a few suitors. They're trying to think through, I think, what they want to do. There's some partnership opportunities up there. I think there will eventually be significant investment. I just don't know when. I continue to hear the construction, lending, capital markets tough. It's not a great time to build if you're borrowing money. It's still too expensive. Obviously, a lot of cost associated with construction these days. It's a challenge. So, as much as I think down the road that it will eventually occur, we aren't planning for that in our immediate horizon for our budget.
Are we looking at retail malls being a source of future business growth? Question mark.
Yeah, no, not particularly.
I was going to say, I would think that perhaps there might be some alternative, literally some pretty radical alternative
I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see, I think, massive changes, a village concept, combination lifestyle, homes, service, maybe some big box. I'd love to see some big box relocate to Redondo or locate in Redondo.
A warehouse? You mean an
No,
Amazon warehouse?
I just mean large home furnishings, utility needs, anything, just stuff that people need to build things. It'd be nice if we had some of that lumber supply, we don't have any of that. And that's a killer for us. We could use much more big box retail in our community. But that's the only site that can really house it. And will it be part of their future plans? Who knows? It's hard to tell. I suspect it'll be a combination of housing, lifestyle, retail, maybe some box, could be neighborhood grocery, some neighborhood box, and then probably service. It's where my guess is that it'll head eventually.
Thank you.
We're talking about some fun stuff. I get asked this all the time. Anywhere I go, they look at me and they say, why are our restaurants, and I know this isn't your fault or anything, don't take this as a criticism, but help me answer their question. Why are our restaurants empty? Why are all these buildings empty? We went through shutters. And we were the only ones that on Saturday night. Is it marketing? Do we need more marketing?
What,
even
just
right
to make
now.
sure, why are our restaurants empty?
Yeah, restaurants or hotels,
Oh, well,
all those offices around the pier.
yeah, so we've got about 82% of our offices on the pier are occupied right now. They're funny. The offices that are in the pier are quiet. There's a lot of kind of small business operators. Their hours aren't typical. They're not like a corporate structure where their lights are on kind of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So they come and go, and it's not always clear that they're there. But we are receiving rents from about 80 to 82% of those properties.
Okay.
It just looks a little more vacant than it is.
Okay.
Same with the pier. We did just open the deep end, the new music jazz club down below the old Barney's Beanery site. That just opened, so we're excited about that. International Boardwalk's full. That's doing well. Moldy is now full. That's doing well.
Do you know off the top of your head, how much money do we spend on marketing?
Marketing,
do we
the
even do
marketing
it?
of the waterfront comes through, there are two associations, the Pier Merchants Association and then the King Harbor Association. And they have pretty significant resources on an annualized basis. I think they do a pretty good job of marketing. They're trying to do better, but we're a partner in that. We don't drive the marketing. We try to let the business community drive it. The Bid in the Riviera Village does a great job. Those restaurants are doing quite well. I mean, the Village is an economic engine for us. They're achieving incredible rents there. The businesses are full. The restaurants are full. Our gross sales tax out of those locations is very good. The Village is doing very well.
What about the areas like I said shutters? I think it's Shade Hotel, right?
Yeah, Shade's doing well. Yeah, Shade, their restaurants a little bit not super busy, but they generate.
But does the city have their own marketing?
No, there's a tourism management district, a TMD. You might remember there used to be a visitor bureau, but then there was a self-assessment by the hoteliers to form a tourism management board, basically. In a district, it's called TMD. They do all the marketing for the region, for the hotels, and we approve their annual budget. They spend about $750,000 a year marketing the city, marketing the properties. There is as active a marketing group as anybody in the region. The South Bay hotels are just all down. The LA region's down. It's a very soft travel market right now. I read somewhere international visitors to LA County are down 30% year over year. It's just it's a challenging time. We're not the only ones experiencing vacancy in our hotels.
Okay. And the reason I ask, and I know this is not even part of the budget, but to share with you, El Segundo was this old sleepy town that no one wanted to visit and live in. And then the mayor at the time, Drew Boyles, he's the one who made it happen to what El Segundo is today. He came in and he said, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make this a cool town. And to this date, he's himself advertising, going everywhere this is something this has to come from council and the mayor.
Well, it has to do a little bit with land too, right? El Segundo is really fortunate. They're one of the few communities that has significant commercial property, light industrial commercial property. They have very small residential base. It's all, as you know, a very small area. They're mostly industrial and commercial space, like 80-20. We are the exact opposite. We're almost entirely residential zoning with very little commercial space. And now with what's happening at the state level with our obligations for housing, our RENA requirements, we are having to now zone more and more of our very limited commercial space to housing. So we can't attract businesses like El Segundo because we have no place to put them. All of our light industrial space, our Impulse space, Northrop Grumman, and now another company that's coming in, have all of that area. There's no other place to go. So as much as we want to attract new business and new corporations and new jobs, we have no space. And unfortunately, the state is limiting even what we have and taking more and more and more away. So El Segundo's in a really unique position. They've done a great job capitalizing on the sort of sports market, you've got the Kings, you've got the Lakers, you've got the Chargers, they've
LA
got
Times,
massive,
he brought in Top Golf.
they've got massive corporations. They have room to do all that. They're fortunate to have it. We unfortunately do not. Our density compared to El Segundo is, I think, 5 or 6x. So from a residential standpoint, it's just a different community. Torrance has a lot of room. They benefit from that. They benefit from big box. They have a lot more space for retail, corporate office, commercial. We just don't have that luxury. For just over 6 square miles, we have 70,000 residents, 11,500 residents per square mile, 3 times the number of Torrance.
So maybe that's something that we need to talk to council about, because
It's
there
something we
are
need to talk
some
to the state about.
locations that
Yeah.
we, instead of making it a swamp, we can make it into a commercial space. You know which location I'm talking about. But before we leave though, there was a guy who had a question about.
The FIFA World Cup
Yes,
and the
so if you want
Olympics.
to mention that.
Yeah,
since we promised him.
I was really hopeful that both of those would create an opportunity for increased visitorship. I still remain hopeful. I'll be curious to see what our hotels do in June. For a moment, all of the FIFA World Cup referees were going to stay at the Sonesta, and then they changed. I'm not sure where they're staying now. We're hopeful we'll see a big uptick. We're going to have a big TV screen down at the Seaside Lagoon for World Cup viewing parties. We're hopeful that folks will make it down to Redondo and eat, shop, and dine and stay.
Okay.
But we'll see.
I think the city needs to, they're not just going to come to Redondo. They're going to go to where someone invites them to go. When they see an ad, they see an opportunity to go. So I know that the private sector is doing our advertising for us.
Well, it's not the private sector. It's a consortium of hotels that have formed the tourism management district. It's like a marketing district, basically.
But we got to help them, because they're not getting there. They're not getting where they're supposed to be. And I know it's
try.
a big ask, but we do have economic development department. And I know they're only focusing on the waterfront.
No, they're focusing inland. We've got the contract for we're spending a lot of time on our TJ Aviation Corridor. That we've got a group called Arias that we've brought in to identify landlords, property owners along the corridors, vacant sites. We're trying to pair them with prospective businesses. So we're doing a full outreach campaign to try to, and they're experts in the field. We're trying to bring those businesses to Redondo where they might be appropriate. We're obviously, the number of building permits last year processed by community development, 400% what it was in the prior 2 years. We've implemented our online permitting system. I'll give you an example. We used to take 6 to 8 weeks to do large plan check review or building permit check review. We're doing it now in less than 11 days and over the counter for the short checks. So our pace of permits has quadrupled. Last year we generated double the amount of revenue estimated for community development activities because of that increased pace. That's the economic development that is really necessary, making it easy for businesses to build and open in the city. Montauk opened, the Deep End, most of the folks that we saw open have all said working in Redondo, opening a business in Redondo is better, easier than anywhere else they've been, mostly because of our hard work from our community development department, who has has been a focus the last 18 months. So we're doing what we can on the land side. The challenge is we just don't have those properties that lend themselves to some of these larger projects that, and those projects are kind of few and far between right now with the general economy. So we'll see. We're hopeful.
I know it's not you. There's only so much you can do, but it's really the council that needs to lead that.
Well, they're doing a lot. This is a big focus for them. They are pushing businesses to come here. They talk about it. it's just hard to get them to execute. We entitled the Galleria not once, but twice. Grub House, we had that fully entitled. We fast-tracked that. Council was fully supportive. And then they just couldn't quite figure out, I think, the financing and the construction costs. It's not for lack of effort. Council's been working really hard. Yeah.
Okay.
They really have.
It's not a new, the way I see it, it's really on council to use their relationships, whatever they have.
Yeah, I think they're trying. It's going to take all of us, it's going to take a willing business sector. That's part of the problem we're facing. I wish our geography was a little different in that respect. I wish, really the effort, I think, needs to be at the state level, helping convince them that if you continue to extract land from us for increased residential at a community of our density, you are not going to leave us with anything left. We will be
Just property tax.
We'll be a bedroom community. We'll be a bedroom community. We'll be like the peninsula.
Yeah.
How did the courts address that issue? I know that we lost a decision recently that defied explanation because, as you say, we're one of the denser communities along here, and we're still having to provide additional housing. Didn't we? Wasn't that issue adjudicated recently?
A component of it was. So what you're referring to is the case. There was a challenge of our housing element was certified by the State Department of Housing, HCD it's called, and we have been operating under that certification since it occurred. A prospective builder and another organization sort of challenged effectively HCD certification of our housing element by claiming that it didn't comply with current state law, in particular to a planning tool called housing overlay zones. We won in the lower court. That win was overturned by the appellate court. We petitioned the Supreme Court to take it up, to re-review it. They did not take it up. So the case was then remanded back to the lower court. And the lower court's hearing is, I think, occurring this week. Meanwhile, as you may have seen, the council updated our housing element to reflect a change and moved away from using overlay zones to another mechanism. So we have since had that housing element recertified by HCD, who has effectively stated in their letter that we were always certified. Our housing element remained effectively certified. So we're in a good position from the state's perspective. There are still some pending matters in the courts as to what its effect is on different projects that have been proposed in the community.
With the demand for housing being what it is, could you forecast what's going to happen to the AES site? They want to put 3,500 apartments on that spot, and that fulfills the need of several people in the state legislature. It certainly is not the way we would like to see it developed.
Well, that was a tricky one. So that site, right, was owned by AES International. There was a purchase and sale agreement with a prospective developer that was partially executed and then stalled. That property was then, AES attempted to foreclose effectively on that property and pull it back into their portfolio. That effort was stalled by a bankruptcy filing by one of the LLCs who was involved in the original purchase and sale agreement, right? So you now have prospective developer and then the original landlord in a dispute over the sale. That is still the case. Those two entities are still in a dispute over the sale. The prospective developer proposed a project that did not comport to neither our local zoning nor the local coastal program, our LCP with the Coastal Commission. So that site's unique in that we don't control, we're not the only authority involved with how that site's zoned and used. We're one agency of record, the other is the Coastal Commission. So the proposed project there not only would have had to have been approved by the city and then eventually our own voters under Article 27, but then the Coastal Commission. So that's a tricky site. That there's multiple cases involved associated with litigation around that matter. It's remains unresolved.
Didn't you say that AES had recently?
Well, then that's the new twist. So now, AES and the prospective developer were in a dispute. Now AES, as you've read, is being purchased by a new LLC formed by BlackRock and in part funded by CalPERS, and I think it's the Qatar Wealth Fund. So really big funds. They're proposing to buy AES, all of AES's holdings around the globe. I think $35 billion acquisition. They're going through due diligence, as I understand it, for the balance of the calendar year. So it remains to be seen if and when they become a player in this transaction, whether they have interest in the outcome, whether that outcome is resolved before they step into AES's shoes. That's a new variable in all of this. So it's a long way of saying, I don't know.
So it's a private land just sitting there.
Yeah.
And that was the example I wanted. That's, if SpaceX, for example, I'm just making stuff up, took over that space and build a commercial property, that would bring a lot of money and folks to shop.
Yeah, I mean, there have been so many different concepts thought about down there. Obviously there's been a lot of push for open space, right? And you could, there's been thoughts about accomplishing open space and some type of commercial activity, over the years. But, the reality is, irrespective of any one individual's thoughts on how it should be developed, it's zoned really for power generation and parks. And so anything else requires a change in zoning and requires an update to the city's local coastal program that would have to be approved by the Coastal Commission. So what any one person would want to do,
I didn't know that.
it has to go through basically 3 different approval processes, including a vote of the residents, because the zoning change to do any of the things that were just described would have to occur.
So if BlackRock purchases that property, they can't do anything.
They would have to, they could do something if they were able to convince. Yeah. So any prospective builder there, unless they're unless they're able to be entitled for more power generation.
Okay. And that's done by charter change or by council vote?
Both. First, you have to prove it administratively at the city council level, a change in zoning. Okay. And then it has to be ratified effectively by the voters. And then it's got to be approved by the Coastal Commission, because it's an LC, it's part of the local coastal program. It's in the coastal zone. Okay. And in the LCP has the same zoning. It has power generation it's PP, forget the exact phrase.
Oh, wow.
PPE
okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's
anything but simple.
Yeah. I had no idea that it was that complicated.
Yeah, it's very complex.
That's going to sit there for a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, several children of several attorneys are going to have their college paid for before all of this is taken care of.
Yeah. The legal field is doing quite well with the conflict, serving them very well.
Yes. I have one question for Stephanie before closing this presentation. Slide 23, for example, there's an internal service all. I forget what that means.
Slide 23?
Uh-huh.
This one?
Community service, yes. Internal service all.
Sure.
What is that?
So overall, these are kind of our larger expense categories. That's just all of our internal services. So that's our overhead, contribution to vehicle replacement, contribution to IT replacement, contribution to workers' comp and liability. So it's the internal services related to that department.
Okay.
And that should be the same for all of these.
Yeah. One big.
Aggregated into one, but it's workers' comp, self-insurance, premium costs, legal, finance, it's their pro rata share of our internal service funds.
And it seems that this was the only area that the expenditure increased.
The internal services?
No, community service expenditures.
Oh, yes. I'd have to go through the departments. So
8%, am I reading that?
Yes, but there's,
Well, the majority of the funds, I'm not like talking about the small department.
Looks like their transfers in.
yeah, so I think what's happening here is this includes all funds. So I'm thinking through what's in community services transfers out. So they have some portions of our Tidelands Fund, Uplands Fund, Housing Authority Fund, and our Transit Fund.
Transit fund, that's the
So
big one.
this represents all funds. What I wanted to do with these slides, and I was not going to make the city manager and/or the commission sit through all of them. What I wanted to do for your viewing and reading information is to give you kind of a summary of the departments, because the commission has asked for that in the past. And I think this is kind of a very high-level view. And then if you're interested, there's a lot more detail and a lot more breakdown of each of the expenses in the budget book. And it can be a kind of starting point to ask more questions.
So to me, when I'm looking at it, this is that one area that we're spending $2 million more than the previous. I mean, that's how I read it.
Yeah, again, I would have to look through the funds and see where this is occurring. My guess is this is the transit fund.
Okay. But isn't transit cost recovery?
Yeah, it's 100% externally funded by federal monies.
Then
Yeah.
we shouldn't be minus for transit.
We're not in the negative for transit.
Okay, well, there's something in there that's making us spend more than we should. That's what I was trying to understand.
Yeah, it's clearly a transfer out of increase, which I'm guessing has to do with how you're.
It's likely to do with how we're budgeting
Right.
something.
In the and I'm guessing in the transit fund, yeah.
I can find it though.
Okay, please, thank you.
Yep. So, and I can, if you don't have any other questions on kind of the general overall budget, we can let the city manager go and I can
Yeah,
go through.
this slide was the only one that I wanted to
Oh, okay.
understand. That's
Oh,
good.
perfect.
Are there further questions of Mike, since we have him here?
Okay, well, listen, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
I've got a quick one.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think it's quick.
Sorry about this. It's my favorite, what's happening in the vehicle replacement package, and let's see some prototype electric vehicles. And I talked with Andrea, your
you
fleet
did?
manager,
Yeah.
last year. Gave her a case studies of about 20 cities that have gone electric with their police patrol vehicles.
Yeah,
And so
Palo Alto.
when you have some time to review that with her, I know that that's a project that I'd like to see a
That's a
prototype.
costly project.
it's a project where, I mean, I shouldn't say specifically that project. We have new state requirements for electrifying our fleet. But first and foremost, what I've asked Public Works, Andrea and Andy, the director, to do is it's time, we need to review our vehicle replacement schedule, our policies. We've done some advanced purchasing of fire equipment and some other units. And it's important that we sort of recapitalize and depreciate those expenses. And we start to work in these new state mandates that are really they are going to be costly. I mean, electrifying our fleet won't be cheap.
Actually,
It may save us some money, though, in other ways.
you've got a 4-year recovery period where you amortize the additional cost to make an electrical vehicle, a patrol vehicle, and then from the balance of your replacement period is all cash.
It's probably
positive.
cash positive, right? Because your maintenance and your other elements are
Yeah.
improved, right?
Push Andrea to give you a little review
Yeah.
on that.
So I think I'm hopeful for that, and I look forward to seeing it. But yeah, we hope to do a comprehensive policy review this fiscal year,
Beautiful.
and this commission will certainly get a look at that.
Thank you.
So we receive and file first, and then we start discussing inputs to provide to city council?
Yeah, you get to do your tonight's just receive and file kind of the materials, and then on the 11th of June,
We do number
right,
2?
you'll get to
Okay.
continue this discussion and then make your recommendations to council. Yeah.
Just in case they ask about the reserves.
Okay,
You're not,
We're 100%
because they
clear.
did before. That's
Yeah.
why I'm trying to be proactive.
All good. I would love to be able
Okay.
to put some more money in there too if we had it. But yeah, so you'll get a chance to do this again on the 11th. I won't be here on the 11th. So if you have any questions of me, now's the time. But Stephanie, of course, will be here to guide you. And you make your motion, however you want to codify your recommendation. You can do individual comments. Typically, it's more effective if you coalesce around whatever your bullet points are, and then you stipulate to that, and then we can pass that along to the council.
Okay. All right, motion to receive and file the presentation.
Public comment before the motion, pardon the interruption.
Go ahead.
Anyone
We
like
have
to come up?
Oh, we have comments.
So on the topic of advertisements of Redondo Beach, so if Redondo Union High School has a pretty successful film department and students creating films, and modern advertising centers a lot around social media and promoting things that way. So I was thinking that potentially there could be a competition for students to create their own advertisements for social media and then have some sort of financial prize for like the top 3. And I think that would, for one thing, be a good way to advertise the city. And also it would promote like pride in the city, because if you want to make an advertisement, you have to realize what really makes the city great. So, yeah.
That's actually, that's a great idea, and this is how El Segundo was doing things, and they used the local community to include and take advantage, I guess, not to take advantage of,
right.
but that's,
Utilize.
I don't know if there is even a department within the city, but that's a great idea.
Well, there certainly is. I mean, that's certainly something that the district could pick up. I mean, they deploy all kinds of different marketing campaigns. They could, I don't know why they couldn't partner potentially with the high school and the program. I'll make sure we pass that along to Rebecca and the TMD
Yeah,
group.
how can he get hold of those people?
Yeah,
If we can get his information and pass it on to those folks?
Yeah, you said it's the theater department or is it the film department?
Well, I mean, you could probably do it for anyone.
Yeah, it would be more of a high school wide thing. I think we know how to get in touch with the administrators at the district to create that partnership. So it's something that we can let Rebecca and company know.
Because even
We'll be sure and have
our-
your teacher follow up with you on that. So,
Even if our official Redondo Beach, I don't know if we have a official social media, whether it's TikTok or whatever is out there.
Yeah,
even
we
if
have all of them.
do those things,
Yeah.
it's a start, and it like an intern can do that. If you have a
We have a
designated
full-time,
intern
we have a
or
full-time social media coordinator, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, she can.
The challenge, though, for us is
Coordinate
we can sell the city and we can promote our services and what we deploy as a community. We cannot market for the business community. We can't show preference
Yeah.
for the business community. So this type of opportunity to market the hotels or other businesses and restaurants, that could be done though in partnership with the district. They don't have that limitation. They could actually offer a cash prize. We can't offer a cash prize.
Our advertisement is easy. I mean, we have this beach that, who else has this kind of miles and
Yeah, and
that's all we have to advertise.
Yeah, and that's what if you look at the ads that go out, TMD, we get an annual report from them in the fall. They do a lot of social media campaign work. They do a lot of really nice spots. They're beautiful. Looks great. And hopefully,
Okay. But no,
they'll
I
land.
thought
It's
that's
a
a
great
great
idea. Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll pass it along.
Thank you.
Mike, question,
gonna let you go.
budget response reports, who generates those?
The departments, the department heads, analysts, and then ultimately reviewed by my office, yeah.
Okay, so the resolution of those or the answers to those are provided by staff?
Yeah, so the first group will be deposited as part of the June 2nd agenda packet. So this weekend, there'll be a batch that'll go out, 10, 15, depending on how many we can get through this week. And then the next batch will drop with the June 9th agenda packet, and then the final batch with the June 16th packet.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we try to do is make clear to the council, hey, here are the questions as we've identified them over the course of the year. Because, you know, you've been to enough meetings, they'll do referrals for what they call BRRs throughout, at the end of meetings throughout the year. So we start taking notes, we kind of log those, and then we create the table of contents, which effectively reflects the questions that we'll be answering. And then the response reports themselves will answer the query.
Okay, further questions of Mike? If not, let's address the question of receive and file.
Receive and file, motion to receive and file.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Done.
Thank you.
Mike.
Thank you.
Now, items J2 and J3 on the agenda have to do with the discussions we've had on CIP and the entire purchasing issue.
Yep, so let's keep it short and let's just bring it back next time.
Yeah.
Because it's already 8:15.
And we need to keep it on the agenda, but we're probably not going to be, it depends on how much budget discussion we have at the next meeting. So we'll bring it back, keep it on the agenda, and if we can't do it next time, we'll do it the time after that.
I want to make sure it doesn't get forgotten.
Okay, last item, commission member items and future commission agenda topics.
All right.
Start down there. Anything?
No, thank you.
Nick?
No.
No, just, I think what we want to discuss is still on it.
I agree. I think that's an important one to follow back up.
Yeah, and then I don't think it's our job to do that, but, you know, what I was talking about was, we basically had that extra, you know, I calculated $3.6 million or so, because 1 point some came from last year, right? It got transferred from last year. That's $1.2 million. Let me see if I can find that.
Were those from unallocated funds though also? I mean, that's just not money.
It was leftover. It was a leftover from last year. So it was 1.385.
We started with, 1.4
So
million, which was
Yeah, so
expected to.
that's leftover from last year. So to me, well, it's a leftover from last year. Why are we spending it?
Well,
That's an extra,
If it's
so it should.
if it's zero-based budgeting, that would apply. If you're saying we're carrying this over because we had 10 million or, you know, 100,000 from last year, we spent 20, so $80,000 is a carryover, but it's still, is it still part of what we are budgeting?
That's why to me, and this is one of the suggestions that we can make and think about how to deal with it, but I just want you to think about it. That money should have gone straight back to the reserves that we had borrowed from. So that's why I was asking, well, what is the expense this year and revenues this year? You know, compared to last budget cycle, because it looks like we're spending more this year. And then the other one was the $2 million, we increased a lot of fees. So what is it that we're spending that we didn't used to spend? So there's a spending issue. And that's another $2.2 million that we could have returned to the
Well, don't you have to
reserves.
recover what the reduction in some of the revenues were though too with that?
Well, that's why I was asking, what are did the revenues go down or did the expenses really increase that much? So that's really what I want to know.
I would just say on the revenue side, I mean, again, we've talked about TOT a lot and we talked about sales tax a little bit. I think what you see is our expenses are increasing, not at, you know, a crazy rate, but they're increasing as general expenses increase, salaries increase, supplies increase, and our revenues, because especially of these two categories, are not increasing by as much. So I think it's more to Commissioner Sherbin's point, we're kind of making up for missed revenues at this point than, you know,
Adding a new.
Yes,
than adding new
so
spending.
that is a big concern that came up back when the treasurer was, remember? So
I
what
remember our
I
letter
just
to the city
heard,
council.
so what I just heard is that our expenses are increasing and our revenue is going down.
Well,
And that's exactly
sorry,
what kind of,
can-
so we keep going back and taking money out. I mean, that's what I,
Can I clarify one thing?
Sure.
I did not say the revenues are going down.
But they're not increasing
I'm
as
saying they
fast as the
currently-
expenses are increasing.
Currently, they are increasing at a slower rate, which is very different
Yes.
than saying that they're
Yes.
going down. And I
Yes.
think
Yes,
the
you're
other,
right, you're right.
the
And,
other-
and that's, again, that's a great point. Expenses are increasing at a higher rate than the revenues.
currently.
So that's something to worry about. Right?
Sorry, if I could make one more minor point, is that unless we see this trend kind of continuing, you know, it also doesn't mean that we're saying, you know what, revenues are going to be like this into the future, right? At this point, I don't think that that's something we project. I think we see the trend is kind of, you know, it's going up kind of regularly. We're having a flat few years and we kind of see it potentially resuming a curve, right? A little bit like COVID. At some point that may not be true, and which is, you know, why we continue to look at it. But I think to say that, you know, kind of ongoing, we're assuming that expenses are outpacing revenues is a little bit stronger than I would put it.
Well, that's what is going on today. The expenses are outpacing the revenues. That's today. Isn't that what's happening?
In this year. Yeah.
This year.
Yeah.
And so why would it change next year? Why would it be any different next year?
Well, so I think some of.
We've got some revenue
Some of
sources.
the revenue sources.
That they're talking about. If TOT comes back online, as far as total revenue is concerned, that's a difference maker right there.
If it comes, what needs to change for it to come back?
You asked the question.
Yeah.
What could
So
happen?
what does it
And
take for it to come back?
That's something that could happen.
Right, but
but
something needs to be different what it is today for it to happen.
Well, if tourism increases, if the economy.
Okay, and why would it increase? You know, when we're projecting, when we're forecasting, it can't be just, well, this can happen, right? It needs to be logical. It has to be sequential. If this happened, then this follows, and then this follows.
And there's cause and effect is
Right.
affecting both
Yes.
expenses and income, expenses and revenue. So it could happen because of growth in the economy. If the economy doesn't grow, then we've got a problem. But everyone has a problem if the economy doesn't grow.
No.
And if inflation sticks around at 3 or 4% and the economy doesn't grow, that compounds the problem. Stephanie, that raises the question, though. I remember seeing recently in one of the local trade publications an article on Hermosa, and Hermosa is having some issues. They showed a 5-year, they showed a graph of a 5-year budget, revenue and expenses. I've never been one for long-term planning, but 5 years is a reasonable time to look at. Do you play around with the numbers like that to look at our what we know, revenue and expenses, and graph or chart those with, say, no increase, some inflationary and some increase, positive increase, and some negative increase, just to get an idea of what could happen 3 years, 4 years, 5 years out if current trends continue. I mean, we can do it at the back of an envelope, but you've got the data to do that in a much more meaningful way.
Yeah, we're looking at that internally, and that's something that we're working with Mike to kind of refine and develop. But yes, definitely, we'll look at kind of the milestones and, as you just said, you know, the things that we know that we know could happen and that may happen, and kind of, yeah, look at those impacts.
That would be interesting in future budget cycles. It'd be helpful to go back 2 or 3 years and then have that forecast going forward up to maybe 5 years as a part of the discussion, just to say if and obviously it's a guessing game, but if that happens, what are we looking at? Because then that tells us, we could have gamed the thing and said at the end of fiscal 21, when we did the bond issue, if CalPERS doesn't make their actuarial assumption, then that means the UAL payment is going to increase. We could have, that could have been one of the forecasts.
Yeah. I mean, with that, it's always hard to tell the magnitude, right? Because
Yeah.
the difference is big enough, that number gets big very quickly. But no, you're absolutely right. I think that's something that helps with kind of our longer term, and especially if we're thinking about reserves and thinking about putting money aside, those are good contingencies to think about.
That would be worth a meeting with the commission before budgeting begins to look at some scenarios like that. Just a thought. Okay, anything else?
I think Trent wanted to say something, no?
No?
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
I think if anybody has any papers that we need to sign, please come on up and we'll